Welcome, everyone, to week one of the Leadership Alliance Professional Development Series. My name is Dr. Taiese Bingham-Hickman, Executive Director of the Leadership Alliance, and I will be the moderator for today's event. This event is a component of the Leadership Alliance Virtual Professional Development Series. The Leadership Alliance Executive Office and its partners created this initiative to ensure continuity of skill building, networking, and exposure to graduate programs for undergraduate students from across the country. Paired with our Wednesday evening workshops, we hope to expose you to a discussion of critical issues, allow you to network with each other and our wonderful doctoral scholars, as well as develop learning approaches and skills for navigating your research careers. Today, I am pleased to introduce doctoral scholar Dr. Chenere Ramsey. Dr. Chenere Ramsey is a distinguished scholar and advocate for underrepresented groups in STEM. She earned her bachelor's in science and chemistry from Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, establishing a solid foundation for her scientific pursuits. Her academic journey led her to be selected to participate in the Duke University Summer Research Opportunities Program in 2002, the NIH-funded Minority Access to Research Careers, or MARC U-STAR program at Hampton University, and the Leadership Alliance Summer Research Early Identification Program at Brown University in 2003. Dr. Ramsey continued to break barriers by becoming the first African-American woman to complete a traditional Ph.D. in neuroscience at the Perelman School of Medicine of the University of Pennsylvania. Following her Ph.D. completion, Dr. Ramsey furthered her expertise as a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Physiology at Emory University, where she was a recipient of the prestigious NIH-funded Institutional Research and Academic Career Development Award, or IRACTA, Fellowship, emphasizing her commitment to research and education. Her career as a tenure-track assistant professor in biological sciences at Hampton University showcased her dedication to academia. Through her passion for broader impact, led her to establish the Ripen MeriSTEM Inc. in 2014. Ripen the MeriSTEM Inc. is a nonprofit that focuses on academic support and professional development for individuals pursuing STEM careers, particularly those from underrepresented communities. Dr. Ramsey has contributed significantly to academia, having taught at institutions such as Clark Atlanta University, Emory University, Bowie State, Hampton University, and Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. Her administrative roles further underscore her leadership capabilities. A staunch advocate for diversity, she has focused on recruiting and retaining minorities in STEM. She also served as treasurer and later president of the Ernest E. Just Biomedical Research Society at Penn, the president of the Black Graduate and Professional Student Assembly at Penn, and executive committee member and founder of the First Things First Peer Mentoring Program for IRACTA Fellows at Emory University. And finally, as the founder and director of the co-curricular pre-professional preparatory program for biomedical sciences and health professions at Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. Her career reflects a profound commitment to education, inclusion, and the empowerment of future generations in science, making her a role model and pioneer in her field. So thank you so much, Dr. Chenere Ramsey, for joining us today. We're so excited to have you.
We have my pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. And we have a number of questions that have come in from your impressive background and all of your the wealth of experiences that you've had. So I'm just going to start with a few of those questions, and then we can get into our conversation. So the first question, what do you think your professional or personal experiences, how have they shaped your commitment specifically to supporting underrepresented students in STEM? And how do you envision the next generation of scientists in terms of how they might transform the landscape of equity and inclusion? So we will start there.
Okay, great. So I went to a historically Black college, Hampton University, and I was surrounded by people who came from my background, obviously ethnic background, cultural background. When I got to the University of Pennsylvania, I was one of only one woman, sorry, I should not say girl. There were 3 other African Americans in the program at the time, and there were not a lot of African American faculty in the medical school at Penn. So it was kind of isolating, honestly, and it was a culture shock for me. So at that time, it was very important to me to see about recruiting other people from my background to Penn and other institutions like Penn. Um, so I joined the Ernest C. Just Biomedical Research Society, which gave me the opportunity to interact with other people in the School of Medicine who were getting PhDs in biomedical studies, who were from different diverse backgrounds, mostly African American and Latinx backgrounds. But there were some other people that participated in those activities. And so from the activities that we did, I became much more interested than I already was in helping to recruit and retain students from diverse backgrounds in STEM. So that experience really helped, if you will, stimulate the interest. But then when I went on to my postdoc experience, the ARACTA program at Emory University had an overarching goal of helping to increase diversity in the biomedical professions. And the goal was to partner a large research institution with minority serving institutions. So at the time, Emory University was partnered with Spelman College, Morehouse College, and Clark Atlanta. And so the idea is if you put researchers into the classroom with students from diverse backgrounds, it will inspire the students potentially to want to be scientists, but also it gives an opportunity for the faculty to collaborate on projects. And so through that experience, it further solidified my interest in recruiting students from diverse backgrounds into STEM. And I actually mentored several undergraduates in the lab at that time. And that's what made me interested in staying in academia and continuing to focus on increasing diversity in STEM. I think in the future, to, I guess, maintain equity or increase equity in STEM, you have to have faculty who are interested in that goal. There's a lot of lip service going on where people say they're interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion. But when you look at people's lifestyles outside of when they're applying for grants or, trying to get some sort of credit on their resumes for doing those sorts of activities, you don't really see in practice a lot of activities going on. And so it doesn't seem to be genuine. I feel like if people generally want that to happen, they will do what they have to do. So you may have to volunteer in the community to go, talk to kids in local schools. You might have to provide some of your own resources out of your pocket to help increase diversity and enrich the experiences of people who are coming from diverse backgrounds. Like I did, I started a nonprofit, which mostly I've used my own funds to support the services that we do because it is such an interest that I have in increasing diversity in STEM. So I think when people have a true commitment to it, I believe where there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, I'll just leave that there. Hopefully I addressed the whole set of questions that were asked. There were more than one question, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I myself also started a nonprofit to help with housing security for diverse populations. So I definitely just want to encourage people out there, if you have an interest, there are resources, you can start your own organization, club, nonprofit. So there's always work to be done and there's always a way to do that work. So thank you for sharing that. We also had a question from a student who is looking for some advice on how they can engage in research. So this is a student that does not have much research experience. They do have some experience teaching as a teaching aide over the summer, but they're looking for ways to engage in research for next summer, and they are asking if you have any suggestions for how to kind of be competitive and put yourself out there in terms of trying to find a research opportunity? We know it's a challenging time right now. So I don't know if there's anything you want to address with respect to how students should navigate seeking out research opportunities.
Sure. I would recommend students to reach out to the advisors at their home institution, faculty who are doing research at their home institution. If you don't know of any that are doing research, the department chairs of each department should have a clear sense for what faculty in their department have active research projects that are ongoing. And they may not even be funded, but if you really want to get the experience, you might have to volunteer just to get some, hours in the lab to do an inquiry-based project, to do something that's like long-term at your home institution. And then when you get that experience, you'll have a faculty member who can vouch for your capabilities in the lab, recommend you for summer opportunities, and also you can show or demonstrate that you're committed to doing research by talking about what you've done when you do volunteer in a lab. Some schools have funding opportunities for undergraduates to get experience. So I would say just overall, try to reach out to their department chairs or even the dean of your school. They definitely would know. And if you want like more specific advice, you can always reach out to me and I could try to find resources for you. But I would say it's best to contact the faculty at your school.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we want to transition a little bit to your background, and a lot of students have asked, how you went from your major in chemistry as an undergraduate to neuroscience, and then, as a postdoc, the work that you were doing there in physiology.
Yeah.
So they want to know like how you made those decisions, what were the kind of turning points for you to make those transitions. If you could tell us a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure. So from the age of 9, I thought I was going to be a medical doctor because I was good in science and math. And a lot of times in our communities, it's assumed that if you're good in science, you're going to go to medical school, right? My dad is a medical doctor. And I wanted to make money, honestly, and I wanted the prestige associated with being called Dr. Ramsey. It never dawned on me that research as a career was an option, even though my mom has a PhD in botany. It just never dawned on me at that time. So when I went to college, initially I majored in biology my freshman year. And I just so had happened to take the chemistry for majors, general chemistry course, and thought that I was going to do poorly in it because high school chemistry wasn't my best grade. But I did really well in that course. And so my professor said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a chemistry major?" So I wasn't really considering that, obviously, because I thought chemistry was hard. That's what I had assumed prior to starting college. But once she asked me that question, I started thinking about it and I said, okay, well, maybe I'll do chemistry minor. Or Hampton University at the time had just started to allow double majors. So I went to the biology department chair, asked her whether it was possible to double major in chemistry and biology. And that request was not approved. So I went to the chemistry department chair and he said, hey, honestly, if you want to go to medical school, you'll be better prepared for that if you major in chemistry because chemistry has more analytical thinking and critical thinking required, and you'll need that to take the MCAT. So he convinced me. I switched my major to chemistry. Once I switched my major to chemistry, I was invited to, they had a monthly department meetings for all the chemistry majors, which there were only 6 or 7 of us my year. It was a very small department. And once we got to that meeting, the chair of the chemistry department said, I will not allow chemistry majors to work at McDonald's for the summer or, go flip burgers or go work at, I don't know, retail stores. I want all my majors to be doing research, summer research. I had never heard of that as a concept. So he said, anyone who doesn't already have a summer internship, come to the chemistry department office. We have a big notebook full of opportunities that have been sent to us. So I go to the chemistry department office and I look through this big old notebook and I found the Duke Summer Research Opportunity program announcement there, applied for that program, got accepted. Once I got into that program And I got into the lab. I was doing molecular biology research to try to generate clones of this particular transcription factor to test for the systemic acquired resistance response in Arabidopsis thaliana, which are plants that are often used in research. Well, I wasn't really interested in that project. However, by doing the research in that lab, I discovered that I actually was good with my hands in the lab. And I heard over and over again, like, you should consider a research career. You should consider going to graduate school. So I'm like, I hadn't really thought about that. I thought I wanted to do medicine, but I decided, okay, I'm going to do an MD PhD, right? That's what a lot of students think. I still hadn't had really any clinical experience, and I hadn't matured in my rationale for wanting to become a clinician. But I knew from that first experience, my sophomore year, the summer after my sophomore year, that I was interested in research. So I reached out to, I think I Googled how to get summer research experience or something like that online, and found out about this thing called Minority Access to Research Careers. Never heard of it before that. And I saw that Hampton University had a program, and I saw the director's name for the program at the time. So I sent him an email and I just said, hey, what is this? Can I be a part of it? And he said, oh, actually, we just had a trainee drop out of the program. So there's a slot open for you. Come to my office when you get back in town, and we can talk about you becoming a trainee in the program. And that's what happened. So that program focuses on students who want to become PhD level biomedical research scientists. It's allowed to get an MD PhD, but it's really strongly encouraged to get a PhD. So once I got into that program, then I participated in a bunch of activities that helped to prepare me for graduate school. So when it came time to apply for another summer research project or summer research experience, I found out about the Leadership Alliance, applied for the Summer Research Early Identification Program, got accepted into Brown University, and was assigned to the lab of a neuropathologist. Didn't know much about neuroscience at all, especially as a chemistry major. We did not have to take anatomy and physiology. I had only taken biology and genetics and botany. So I didn't know much at all about anatomy or physiology. But my research mentor, whose name is Suzanne Delamont at Brown, she did brain autopsies twice a week, I believe, Tuesdays and Fridays. So maybe about my third or fourth week into the program, she said, hey, I want you to come with me to an autopsy tomorrow. And I said, no, thank you. I had no interest in doing that whatsoever, because the autopsies were performed in the morgue of the hospital. I realized that summer I did not like germs. I was very uncomfortable in hospital settings. And I often had to go into the hospital because she was an MD and an MPH. So she was often in the hospital. Well, anyway, it wasn't a choice. So I had to go to this autopsy. I show up at 8 in the morning, or maybe 9. I think it was 8 in the morning. Walk into this room, this morgue. And thankfully, I didn't see a dead body, but I did see a bucket in a sink with a brain inside, which I had never seen a brain before. So my research mentor pulls out this brain from the bucket. She plops it down on the sink, or the surface beside the sink. And she's asking questions of all the different students she invited to the autopsy. There was one medical student there, and I think another undergraduate from Brown there. So she starts carving this brain, and I noticed it had a big black hole on the back left side of the brain, and it looked like maybe the person had been shot or something. So I asked her, I'm like, did this person get shot? Like, what happened? So she said, no, I think this was a mother of 3. She had HIV that progressed to AIDS, and this is a fungal infection that got into her brain and caused her to die. And so I'm sitting there listening to this, and I had never fainted before, but somehow, I guess instinctively, my body said, I'm seeing these blue spots, and I think I'm about to faint. So what came out of my mouth was, I think I'm about to. Before I got to faint, I was already on the floor. I don't recall any of this, but someone else told me, like, yeah, you started to like be spongy, and next thing you know, you fell. So we kind of just let you fall on the floor. And the next thing I know, I was awakening on the floor. I was watching the autopsy from the floor. And once I came to, my research mentor said, we should have a come to Jesus talk about your interest in medicine. Because are you really interested in being a medical doctor if you cannot watch a brain get carved? There's no blood. It's not disgusting. Imagine if it had been in the skull and you had to witness me take it out. Would you have been able to handle that? And so I had to be honest with myself. I said, no, I probably would not. And then she said, well, I don't want to discourage you from going into medicine if that's something you really want to do. I just want you to think about what your motives are for pursuing that. So I realized my motives were not pure. I just wanted to make a lot of money and be called Dr. Ramsey. So she said at the time, I definitely see that you have wonderful research skills. You're great with your hands. You ask the right questions. Your experiments work. I would certainly recommend you for a PhD program. If you want to do an MD PhD, that's fine. I will recommend you for that too. But I just want you to be honest with yourself about what your interests are and what you would be comfortable doing long term. So I changed from 9 years old. I was at the time 21 and decided to pursue a research career solely. And because I had that experience in the neuropathology lab, I decided neuroscience was what I wanted to focus on. I was interested in Alzheimer's research specifically, even though honestly, I didn't know anything about neuroscience. I didn't know what a neuron was, the difference between an axon and a dendrite. I knew nothing. But I was able to apply for graduate programs. I got accepted into the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. And I did research on Parkinson's disease pathogenesis, actually looking at genetic forms of Parkinson's, characterizing specific pathogenic mutations that cause early onset Parkinson's disease, and was able to publish 6 first author publications in doing that. And then once I got to the Emory Department of Physiology, I was more focused on getting training to teach, but I continued to do research related to Parkinson's disease. But I looked at the role of neuroinflammation in the pathogenesis of Parkinson's disease. So that's sort of my story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I always tell students, when I talk to them, the path is never straight, So you think you're going to do one thing and you might end up doing something completely different. And I also was in the MARC program myself. I went to UMES, so I had a similar experience. These programs, these research opportunities really do open up not just doors, but your eyes to what you may or may not want to do, right? So yes. I think your story was a perfect example of that. We have a lot of questions from students about the current climate with respect to research, in terms of how research is under attack, and also specifically DEI programs. Yes. So I've received this question in multiple forms from various students, but what advice would you give to young students who want to pursue research and want to, get the PhD? What advice do you have for them, given this challenging climate that we are currently in?
Well, I would say your primary focus should be getting the best grades you can, getting the best understanding of the content that you're learning in your basic science courses, and getting as much research experience as you can. And if that can lead to publications, even better, no matter what stage you are in your career. I would say if you can find a mentor who would be interested in pouring into you with respect to helping you know how to write scientifically, helping you publish whatever you've been working on in their lab, no matter what it is, either in the form of an abstract that you present at an international meeting or in a formal research publication, that is going to be very helpful. When it comes to getting a PhD, I think all of us are kind of in limbo about what's going to happen in the future with funding. But if you are a strong candidate, no matter what your ethnic background, it shouldn't really matter. One word of advice that I did get from my Brown University Leadership Alliance mentor was, don't limit yourself to minority money. She didn't say it like that, but basically that's what she said. She's like, if you're a good scientist, don't just be a good Black scientist, be a good scientist. Don't just compete for Black money, compete for all money. Yes, if there's Black money, Hispanic money, whatever available to you, yeah, compete for it. But don't limit yourself to that. And, try to be as strong of a candidate for whatever doctorate program you apply for, whatever fellowship opportunity you apply for. And hopefully, unless they get rid of all STEM education funding and fellowships and graduate application of graduate training funding, I think that, as long as you focus on being strong, you'll be okay. That's the best advice I can give about that. Mentoring is important too. Finding a mentor who can be straight up with you, like I had at Brown, and help you in areas where you might be weak. Because I had some weaknesses. My writing wasn't the best. I mean, my grammar was fine, but in terms of writing scientifically, I had no experience doing that. And she let me know straight up. She said, we almost didn't accept you to the Leadership Alliance program because your writing is so terrible. And she said it just like that. It hurt my feelings, but it helped me. So she said, when you get ready to apply to graduate school, send me your personal statement. And I will make sure that it's revised to the level that represents the person I know you really are and the strengths you really have. So yeah, do that.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a great mentor, and
Yes.
definitely she was invested in you and, your success. What would you say to students who may not have the best mentor in their research lab, or they don't have a mentor at all? What suggestions would you have for either seeking out a mentor or trying to find a network of people that support them in their research journey?
Sure. So the National Institute of Health is currently funding an initiative called the National Research Mentoring Network, Norman. So if you Google NRMN, NIH, I'm sure you will find it's like a consortium of universities that are focusing on mentoring from undergraduate all the way to junior faculty level. And really, they were focusing on underrepresented groups. I'm sure that language is going to have to change, but you can actually sign up for an account with them and be assigned to a mentor that you can choose, their discipline or different specific things about the mentor that you want, and they can assign you to a mentor. That's one way. Another way is, and though it may be uncomfortable, but there are faculty at your institutions that you may not realize are interested in helping students or will be willing to help students. And so if there are any professors that you really like who, they do a good job of teaching, and they seem to be really passionate about research or passionate about student training, you can always ask them, hey, would you be willing to mentor me? And or can you recommend someone who could mentor me? You can reach out to organizations like the Leadership Alliance or Ripen the MeriSTEM, and we could help you find a mentor. Finding a mentor isn't the most comfortable process, especially if you're doing it cold. And it's something that I've even struggled with, but it's just one of those things you have to do, because if you don't have a mentor, especially in science, it's a lot more political than you think. It's going to be difficult for you to be successful long term. So yeah, you have to take the initiative to find one, either by just directly asking someone or, applying through different initiatives, mentoring programs and mentoring consortiums, to find a mentor. And not all mentors do all things. Like you might need a mentor that teach you how to write, and then a different one to teach you how to network and conference, and a different one to teach you how to balance your life and your work. You might not find one person that does everything, but you can like piece them together to get one experience that is going to benefit you the most.
Thank you. Yes, and we just hosted a mentorship conference that we recorded. So if anyone is interested, and Dr. Ramsey was there with us, there's plenty of content on how you can find a mentor, what strategies you can use to seek one out, and what makes, characteristics of a great mentee relationship. So reach out to Dr. Indorf, or Dr. Indorf can share that information with you if you're interested in that. We also had quite a few questions, Dr. Ramsey, about how you made that transition from doing, active research to academia, academic administration, teaching. So why did you make that transition? And what would you say to students who want to pursue a path in academia?
Okay, so being a faculty member, you wear a lot of hats simultaneously. So in addition to teaching, in my role, I ran a research lab. I advised students. I sat on committees. I applied for grants. I served as the sponsor for the biology club. And I found that I really enjoyed all of those things, but not necessarily at the same time. And I kind of got pulled into starting this nonprofit from having conversations with students and then some of my peers who were expressing frustration with the lack of mentoring, the lack of guidance that it seemed that students had from my background with respect to how to navigate becoming a scientist, how to go from, sitting in your class and just learning the basic things in your textbook to applying that to a real world situation and then taking that experience and applying it to actually get into graduate school or to get a job. And I was so passionate about it that I decided I'm going to do something about it. So I started the nonprofit. No business training, no legal training. I just went and used my scientific reading experience, my reading knowledge and my reading comprehensive skills, and went online and Googled how to start a nonprofit. What documents do I need to submit? How do I fill these out? And this was before there was AI that could do a lot of this stuff for you. But yeah, I just read everything I could. I asked a few people like what they knew. I had an attorney friend of mine who was a patent attorney who was able to give me some advice. And my mom had started a nonprofit prior, like a long, long, long time ago. I mean, I didn't really ask her that much, but she was able to give me some insights. And so I transitioned out of being a faculty member to doing the nonprofit full time, but still do teach adjunct and whenever I'm asked here and there. But yeah, it was more of a calling, or something was pulling me in this direction. And sometimes I do miss research. And when that happens, I reach out to colleagues and say, hey, I have this research idea. Maybe you can pursue it. Or, hey, can I come into your space and try some experiments? I even built a lab at my house. And so I can do like small molecular biology experiments and stuff like that whenever I get the desire. But it wasn't that difficult of a transition because when I was a graduate student, I was the president of two organizations at the same time, and I had to manage a budget and manage people, a board, and all that kind of stuff. And then I was on the executive committee and an administrative role as a postdoc. So I had some familiarization with being an administrator. But I would say, like, we as scientists are trained to do a lot of things we don't realize that we're trained to do. So there's a lot of transferable skills that I applied to founding and running a nonprofit. So yeah, I didn't find the transition, that difficult.
Yeah, same here. So a friend of mine has a nonprofit and she literally sent me an ebook on how to set up a nonprofit, and that's what I did. I just used my, like you said, reading comprehension skills. There's steps as with any experiment that you may be working on that you have to follow, and then use your network, use the resources of the people that you know, whether it be an attorney or someone to help write grants, right? We do that as scientists and faculty members. So yes, I think those skills are definitely transferable wherever you go. And even if you decide to pivot and you don't want to do research anymore, those skills will stick with you in your future endeavors.
Exactly.
So we have some questions about your time at Emory as an Aracta fellow, and they want to know, what challenges you faced at Emory, either academically, professionally, or personally, and how did you navigate that time?
I think the biggest challenge I faced was coming to terms with the fact that I did not enjoy exclusively being in the lab as a postdoc, just solely doing experiments. At the point that I had been accepted into the Iraqi program, but I hadn't started doing my teaching training yet. I had never mentored students in the lab yet. And I spent 50, 60 hours a week in the lab. It was very, very lonely and isolating. I didn't have a social life. And while I might have been very productive in generating data, I just felt like, what is the point of this? Like, I wasn't interacting with people. Like, I felt like, is this my life for the rest of my life? So I honestly considered walking away from science altogether. And before I made that choice, I let my research mentor know that I was having these doubts and concerns. So she invited me to come outside. We sat down on the grass and she just said, we all experience this in one way or another at some point in our career. But maybe you need to pivot and do something a little bit different that still allows you to use your research skills and see how you like that. So she said, this summer, I have an undergraduate coming from Spelman who I'm supposed to be mentoring. How about you mentor her instead? It'll be helping me in more than one way because, a lot of PIs are very busy. So she said, you can be with her in the lab daily. I can assign her to whatever you're working on. You train her and let me know how you feel about that. And that completely changed my life. To this day, I give her credit. She's in medical school. Or she graduated medical school, and is doing a residency right now. But from mentoring her, I realized how much I actually do love science. I just didn't want to be the lab rat in the lab every day by myself in a cubicle, doing PCRs and cutting brains for the rest of my life. So training other people in the lab, I really loved. So that was one aspect of being an Iraqi fellow that, it went from a frustration to a benefit. And then it was further beneficial when I actually got a chance to teach at the undergraduate level. And then I fell in love with teaching and just the ability to, educate other potential scientists, budding scientists, or people just interested in biology. I was teaching biology, introductory biology. So yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, we have so much in common. We should chat after this. I did the same thing. I did a postdoc for a year at Harvard and decided I didn't want to work in the lab anymore. So I made a pivot to the private sector, working for a health insurance company, managing data analytics, which was related to my PhD. My PhD was in pharmacology or is in pharmacology. So we were doing like pharmacy analytics work. And I had no idea what I was doing or what I was walking into, but I'm like, again, I can use the skills. I can figure it out, right? I'm a scientist. I can use my deductive reasoning skills to figure this out. So yes. So there, like I said, those skills really do help you get to that next level. What would you say to students about your experience specifically with the Leadership Alliance, and how that has shaped your career, your trajectory, and what impact you think the Leadership Alliance or programs like that have for young students?
Well, for me, the Leadership Alliance hugely impacted my career because had it not been for my experience in Suzanne Delamont's lab, one, I probably would have tried to go to medical school and failed, or maybe in the clinical stages had a nervous breakdown. But two, she walked me through the graduate application process, specifically regarding writing my personal statement and making sure that it was a reflection of the skills I had to bring and the experiences I had. She also gave me some good advice about selecting a school, selecting a program, because I got into a lot of good PhD programs, but I didn't necessarily know, well, how do I know which one is the best for me? And so she kind of helped me navigate that question. And programs like the Leadership Alliance are absolutely necessary and essential. Like if it wasn't for the Leadership Alliance, I really don't know if I would have ended up in science. I'm being honest. Yeah, I mean, I was in the MARC program, but Some people that do the MARC program end up going to medical school, even though they're not supposed to, but they end up going to medical school and not pursuing research careers. So, once I did the Leadership Alliance experience, it solidified my interest in research and also provided me with a great mentor who helped me get to the next step. Also, it's great because now I have access to all of the doctoral scholars. There used to be, I'm assuming there still is, but a meeting at the end of the summer where all the Leadership Alliance early identification program trainees came together and presented their research for the summer. And that was really fun. And also I got to go back to that meeting a couple of times I think once as a graduate student or maybe a postdoc. I went back a couple of times after I actually got my Ph.D. And that was fun. And then seeing other doctoral scholars and where they are today and being able to say, hey, I was in a Leadership Alliance. You were in a Leadership Alliance. Okay. And then we can talk about it like that, even though we may not know each other or may not have been at the same institution. So it's great. It's a great resource. It's a great training opportunity. So yeah, I can go on and on and on about the benefits of the Leadership Alliance and programs like it.
Thank you. We have a question from a student in the Q&A, and she wants to know if you can speak to the hardest obstacle or most surprising thing that may have come up during your research journey and how you dealt with it and what your advice would be for others.
Well, I had a very interesting experience in graduate school with my research project. So first, I was in the neuroscience graduate program, but my research mentor, thesis advisor, we call them, was in the Department of Pharmacology, and his background was biochemistry. He was very, very serious about, he was in the lab every day doing his own experiments, which is not common. But he was new, so he wasn't tenured yet, and I was his first student. So he was very hard on me, and I was very intimidated by him. He went to McGill University, which is like the Harvard of Canada, and just a very serious person. And I, personality-wise, didn't necessarily vibe very well with him at all. Like, it was really bad initially. And it got to the point where at one of my thesis committee meetings, I was asked to leave the room, and all I heard was yelling in my committee. I don't know what they were yelling about, but there were several meetings requested with me separate from him with different thesis committee members, and they just wanted to know, like, what is going on with y'all? Like, we don't know what it is. We don't want to assume it's racism or sexism or what, but something is obviously wrong. So I'm not the most confrontational person. So oftentimes, like, he would say something to me that would make me question my intellectual capabilities, and it affected my confidence in the lab. So eventually, I just had enough. I had it up to here. So I wrote him this long email, and I just said, I feel like you don't respect me. I feel like I'm giving everything I can. I'm in the lab 3:00 in the morning. I'm in the lab Saturday, Sunday. I'm here all the time. I'm doing the best I can. And I just don't know why it seems like you're just not happy with me. And at this point, I had been in his lab for like almost 5 years. Yeah. So I sent the email. I was nervous about how he would respond. He called me into his office and we had a heart-to-heart. Basically, he said he felt like I wasn't pushing myself hard enough, which at first I was like, what? I am tired and I am working hard. He was like, no. You're one of the smartest people I have ever met, which shocked me. You could have knocked me over with a feather. He said, but I feel like you're constantly comparing yourself to your peers and just trying to stay where they are. And as long as you do that, you're not going to be successful because they may not be successful. So you need to push yourself to your limit, not to their limit. And I think if you push yourself as much as you can, you're going to be one of the most successful students in your program. He said, I believe you can publish everything you've worked on, and I challenge you to push yourself as hard as you can. So at that point, I think I had 2 publications. That was in September of 2009. By March of 2010, when I defended my thesis, I had gotten 4 more publications. So I guess I proved him right, and he proved that I could do more. By the time I defended my thesis, he actually said, and I believed him, that he was proud of me. He gave me a hug. It was very awkward and uncomfortable, but he offered a hug, and then he recommended me for the Aracta program, and he was my biggest advocate. But like before that, it was rough. It was rough, and everybody in my life knew how rough it was. It was very uncomfortable, and I almost quit several times. The only thing that kept me from quitting was I didn't want to misrepresent my family. And of course, I had that whole, the weight of the world is on my shoulders because I can't quit. I'm the first African-American female that could finish this program. I don't want to prove that we can't do it. So, yeah.
Well, that's definitely a lesson in resiliency, if I haven't heard one. So, yeah, sometimes, you think that people are critiquing you, and they are, but it might be to your benefit, and you're just not
Exactly.
accustomed to receiving it in the way that they're expressing it. So, I love that lesson in resiliency. So we're almost at time, Dr. Ramsey, and we have a number of questions that we're not going to get to. So I will ask, if you're comfortable, we'll share your information in the Google Classroom, and students can connect with you directly. But I guess I just want to close on what your biggest piece of advice or message to students out here, who, again, we're in challenging times. They have gone through, we've all gone through COVID not too long ago. And so what message do you have to our aspiring researchers and scholars out there?
I would say continue to ask questions. Science is more about questions than it is about answers. Bring your authentic self into the lab with you. Whatever, problems you may have encountered in life or questions you may have about life, those might be valid and never have been researched before. And by bringing your diverse experiences into the lab, then we can answer more questions at large in science. Definitely just be authentic. A lot of people do a lot of code switching in science, and at sometimes it's necessary, I would say, but I found that for me, I became much more successful and comfortable when I just allowed myself to be myself in different settings. So, don't try to assimilate too much. It is necessary to do so in certain settings, but try to bring as much of your authentic self that's appropriate to the bench, in the lab, in the classroom, to your different research experiences as possible, because that is how we're going to get to a more diverse set of ideas and more diverse experiences in STEM. And yeah, like she said, you can always reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to communicate with you via email or phone or text or whatever. And yeah, thank you so much for having me do this. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I do want to ask one follow-up specifically related to graduate school. So
Okay.
as you're a faculty member, I'm sure you're helping students with their applications or helping mentor them.
Yes.
We do have rising seniors amongst us who may be thinking about going to graduate school, or they may be a little hesitant to move forward. So what would you say specifically about the graduate school process and how to make themselves competitive?
Okay, so when I applied to graduate school, the GRE was a thing. Some graduate programs have eliminated the GRE requirement, but I would still say, just based on my experience, I took the GRE and I focused on getting the highest math score as I possibly could. And I think that is what set me up to be able to compete at, some of the top tier research institutions. Because my verbal score wasn't as good as it could have potentially been, because I really didn't focus on verbal at all. But that probably wasn't a good idea. So I wouldn't recommend you do that. But in addition to that, it's okay to reach out to people you don't know at schools of interest and be like, hey, thinking about applying to your program, and I see that you do this particular research project. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Or can you tell me a little bit more about the program? That's actually what I did. I reached out to a professor at University of Pennsylvania who was doing some Alzheimer's research, and he responded like almost immediately and sent me a very thorough email response. He ended up being on my thesis committee when I got to Penn, but I was looking for that type of investment in students. So, I would recommend you try to reach out just to get a vibe for what are the people like at this institution, but also make yourself as competitive as possible. I mean, that you can't get away from that. So get the highest scores that you can, make sure you keep your grades up. Make sure you do well in your science courses, obviously, and make sure that you have some research project that you can speak about in detail with respect to the hypothesis and the data that you collected and what you conclude about it. Because what's most important if you're pursuing graduate studies is that you understand what the point is of going to graduate school. Like, the degree is not the end. Some people feel like, oh, I got a PhD and I'm done. That is just the means to the end, which is a career in STEM, whether that's being in academia or industry or government or something completely unrelated. If you go to graduate school, you're going to get a certain type of training, and that training then can be transferred to a variety of jobs. But the graduate school degree is not the end goal. So when you talk about wanting to go to school, think about what's 5 years after school or 10 years in the future after school, and make sure they're clear that your motives are pure. And I think you'll be good if you do those things.
Yeah, and I also want to make a plug for, as part of this virtual professional development series, there will be virtual recruitment events where you'll get to meet with various graduate schools that are part of the Leadership Alliance Network, and you can ask them questions about their programs and their schools in particular. So I highly encourage you all to take advantage of that. And then in addition, as Dr. Ramsey mentioned, we do have a symposium at the end of the summer, which is the Leadership Alliance National Symposium. We are going virtual this year, but students will have an opportunity to present either oral or e-posters. And again, we will have a graduate school recruitment portion where you can drop in and talk to different graduate schools about their programs. So take advantage of those opportunities. They're free, they're available to you, and hopefully you get some good information from them. With that, I think we are going to wrap for today. Again, thank you all for attending. I know for some of you, it's the first day of your research experience, so we hope that you're excited about what you're endeavoring to do, and we're excited to have you all here. For those that are not part of the Leadership Alliance program, we hope that you take full advantage of this virtual professional development series. Again, it's at no cost to you. There's some amazing information and resources that you'll be able to have access to. So please continue to tune in. If you can't, for some reason, tune in live, we do record all of these sessions and we post them on our YouTube channel. So feel free to go back and watch them later. Follow us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, all the things. So if you want to know what's happening with us, follow us and stay in touch. So again, Dr. Ramsey, thank you. We're so grateful. And I know students will be reaching out to connect with you further.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this, and I look forward to hearing from you, students.